This is Deborah Atkinson, and you're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top questions and struggles. I share what to eat, how to move, and how to think to get the energy and the vitality that you want in this second and better half. And today is really exciting. A lot of you have asked, a lot of our Flipping 50 community members who are primarily men or women. I know there are some men lurking who tell me they're listening, they're staying on there. But I'm often asked, who's the Flipping 50 for guys? Do you have anybody who could work with my husband? He's looking for somebody to follow and not quite finding it. Well, today just may be your gold mine. My guest is Allan Misner, and just before his 39th birthday, Allan had a wake-up call. While vacationing at a tropical resort, he tried to play volleyball, but got too tired to stay in the game. Once an athlete, he'd let himself go as work stress, a toxic relationship, and poor health choices had gotten him to well over 250 pounds. As he sat on the beach, the water lapping at his feet, he realized he needed to make a change and decided to improve his lifestyle and reclaim his fitness. Over the next 8 years, he rode countless waves of wellness and fatness. It was this roller coaster ride that made him realize a decision was not enough. So one day, while lying on a bed of a hotel room, hungover and fat again, he made a commitment to his health and well-being. Today, Allan Misner is a National Academy of Sports Medicine certified personal trainer and a Functional Aging Institute certified functional aging specialist. He's the creator of the thriving 40-plus fitness community, providing one-on-one and group fitness coaching, nutritional guidance, and personal training for clients over the age of 40. He's also the host of the 40-plus Fitness podcast, for which he has interviewed hundreds of health and wellness experts with a wide range of specialties. Allan, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. It's really an honor to be a part of this podcast.
Hey, and the one cardinal sin I will bust myself on is I always ask a guest, how do you pronounce your last name? So I'm going to have you say it correctly.
It is actually Misner. So you're batting 50-50, which is good in the major league. It's really good in the major league.
There we go. I'm going to roll with that. I'm going to leave that alone. So, and for my audience, it is so funny that I always ask this question because I think I was raised to say, or hearing, it's not polite to ask that, but we have to ask here, how old are you now?
Yes, I am 52.
So he's legal to drive. He can be here, y'all who are listening.
I'm flipping 50, yeah.
Totally are flipping a lot of things in your life, and I love it. So I think that backstory is really an important part, but I want to kind of come back to something I picked out as I was introducing you. Why was it that deciding to lose weight or get healthy is not enough and wasn't enough for you?
Yeah, deciding is one of those interesting words, and I was actually reading an article today about a tribe. I believe they're in. I'll just screw up pronouncing it, so I won't even say it. It's an African tribe. They actually don't have a word for the color blue. And so as a result, you can put something blue in with a bunch of green tones, and they physically can't tell you which one is which. And so I'm kind of fascinated with language because I do communicating through a podcast, and I'm working with clients trying to keep them motivated. And I started noticing this in myself is words like resolution. So few people actually succeed at resolutions, that if you fail at a resolution, you're actually now part of the majority. So you're part of the club. We use terms like diet. Instead of meaning what you eat, we mean, what are you going to eat for a while? What's the restriction and how long are you going to hold out? And then we use words like willpower. And most people are proud to announce they don't have adequate willpower to say no to donuts or cake or chocolate or whatever their fix is. So we have these words: decision, diet, willpower, and they're weak words. They're actually meant to set us up to fail. But the word commitment is different. So with the commitment, what you're actually doing is you're coming up with a why, and you're coming up with a vision. And so, when I look at my relationship with my wife Tammy now, I look at, we had a deep, deep love for each other, and then we had a vision for the life that we wanted to live together. And so we went into this commitment with that deep emotional thing, the why, and this vision for where we could take our lives and what it would be like. And I think the way to succeed in health and fitness and and happiness, which is how I define wellness, is to truly make a commitment to yourself based on self-love by having that deep emotional why. For me, initially, it was my daughter, Rebecca. And later, of course, I married, so my extended family is now included in my why. But it's this deep emotional thing of what I want. And then my vision defines the things that I do for my wellness to get to that vision. And then once I'm at that vision, I want to stay at that vision or be better. So I keep striving to do those things. But I couldn't accomplish this over 8 years of trying and failing and trying and failing. When I made the commitment to get healthy, to get fit, and to be happy, I was able to put it all together.
Yeah, I love that. So strong. And, this comes up, especially at this time of year, so many times, right? How do I get motivated? How do you stay motivated, Deborah, to exercise? And like you, it's not motivation. I am not motivated every day, but I'm committed. So it's that follow through that comes when you get to that point. Love that. So rich. All right. So in your book, you say we're opportunistic eaters. So we want to dive in and unpack that one, and that's a problem today. What do you mean by that?
Well, our ancestors did not have refrigeration or preservatives or grocery stores on every corner, McDonald's on every corner. They had to go get their food. And during certain parts of the year, food could be extremely scarce. And so when they came up on something, they would eat it. So when someone tells me that, that you should just go low fat, or you should just go low carb, or whatever eating style they want to push as a way of going forward, I say it like this. My ancestors would have walked up on a blueberry field and would have eaten all the blueberries because they don't fight back. They taste delicious. And they would have just ate as many blueberries as they could because they would know that they were going to go out of season and be gone in a short period of time. So they would gorge themselves. They would feast. Then during the winter, the blueberries are gone. Most of the vegetation is gone. So now they're having to forage. Now they're having to fish. The fishing and the foraging and the catching small animals, that's not dangerous. So they would do a good bit of that. That's where they would get most of the nutrition during the winter months. And then occasionally a group of us, maybe 6 or 8 of us, would say, hey, let's go kill a bear because I'm kind of hungry. And then we would go with a plan and we would kill a bear, but we wouldn't do that all the time. We wouldn't eat all the time. We would eat when it was available. And then when it wasn't, we would just do what we could do to get through the season. And I think now we don't look at things like fasting and managing our food intake for the nutrition that we need. We tend to go at it with there's a McDonald's on this corner. Oh, someone brought in donuts. And even though I had breakfast and I know I'm going to be going to lunch with someone, I'm still going to eat the donut because it's there. That's how we're hardwired in many ways to do those types of things. So when you start to understand what's driving you and are you really hungry, or do you really need that food? Is it serving your health and wellness, or is it hurting you? That's the kind of things that run through my head when I'm talking to my clients. It's one of the principles, it's kind of a tactic or strategy, if you will, of how to not gorge yourself at home is to clean out your pantry of the foods that you would most likely do that with. Because if it's in your pantry, You're going to go get it. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the opportunity. You've got to, that's one strategy, is to look at what are those opportunities where you're going to struggle, and try to remove as many of those obstacles out of your way, so that you don't fall prey to them.
Love that. So I'm gonna do a little true confession. So I'm gonna treat you like a priest and pretend I'm Catholic for a minute. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So in my house, I can't bring in those healthy, quote unquote, black bean chips into my house. I can't, because it's just me. And if I'm looking at the dog, I know he didn't eat them. I ate them. Yeah. And, there are just some trigger foods that for each of us, that's the thing. And so my question to you is, have you got a trigger food?
I have a lot of trigger foods.
Okay.
Now,
you win. Okay.
I have a lot of them. I honestly do. And so I try to make sure that I just don't have those things around, but that's also another side of when I look at eating and health and wellness. I don't have metabolic syndrome. I don't have prediabetes. I don't have some of these issues. So I have a little bit more flexibility with myself when it comes to food. So I do a thing I call seasonal ketosis, and we can get into more detail of what that is, but there are periods of the year when I let myself have all of those trigger foods. I don't worry about it too much. And then there's times of the year when I go back into my famine. I have my spring feast and I have my famine. I choose those dates.
Definitely. I want to hear more about that. So seasonal ketosis, what is it?
Okay. I kind of explained how I felt my ancestors probably ate. Yeah. Now, they were from Northern and Eastern Europeans. So I'm all white guy and I cannot jump. So I fit at 100%. But I also know that my ancestors did not have access to fruit all year round. And they certainly didn't have access to Snickers all year round. So there were periods of time when food was scarce and they were eating predominantly a fish and meat diet, and probably more leaning towards the fish because it's just safer. And so I eat a high fish diet. And with some meat. I do still eat some vegetables because I know that the nutrition I want to have, it needs to be there. So I do eat some vegetables. I tend to take multivitamins during my famine period just to kind of cover my bases on stuff. But then when it comes around to my feasting season, then I'm going to say, okay, if I want to go and have some beers with my friends, then I can. If I want to, go ahead and maybe someone brought some pizza to something, and I'll say, okay, I'll have a slice of pizza. I let myself have those things during that particular period of time. And what I've found is I get my fill, I finish my season, and then I'm good. So for me, I actually kind of reverse these a little bit because I'm a big college football fan. I love tailgating. I typically go to see my family in North Carolina during the fall. My brother is a brewmaster. So if I get a chance to go by his brewery, I'm going to have some beers there. I'm going to have some beers tailgating. I know that's going to be my season. And that's typically going to run during the college football season, which blessedly is coming to an end soon here. And then I'll go into my famine season. And that's when I'll really tighten up on my nutrition. I'll eat, predominantly what I would call a low carb from the perspective of the carbs I do eat are mostly fibrous vegetables, very little fruit, almost no fruit during that period of time. So the things I like, I have when I can have them or want them. But then I have my periods where I say, no, I don't. And so that actually takes my famine season takes me through Girl Scout cookies. So I don't get the Girl Scout cookies.
Deadly. I know. They're so deadly. Good. Great description. I love that. Love that. And I think, the advantage of doing that is for everybody to know it's like you're not drawing a hard line and it's like you'll never have this again. There's still, there's rotation in life, just like there is in every season. I love that.
Yeah. And I also don't look at it when I'm going to my famine. I'm not looking at it as a restrictive diet or restrictions on myself. Mm-hmm. It's just, I say, okay, well, this is just what would be available to me. And I need to accept that as just the the reality. We live in a world that is just food abundant everywhere. And but unfortunately, when you walk into a grocery store, 90% of what's in that grocery store, our great grandmothers would not recognize as food.
Right. And your body doesn't.
It doesn't. Right. So, I almost never go down the aisles. I go down the aisles to buy some coffee and some canned fish and spices. And that's about the only reason you're going to find me in the middle sections of a grocery store is for those three things.
Yeah, ditto. Yeah. And, I also like the fact that when you said, you've got this not a deprivation kind of standpoint, I think we like boundaries, right? So it's actually a relief when there's so many choices, there's such an abundance. And whether we're talking about the multitude of diets or just the multitude of options in a grocery store, I find that I've done the fasting mimicking diet 4 times now. And what I find with clients that it's appropriate for is that it's like a relief, that I don't have to think about what to do. It's all taken care of for me. And rather than feeling like it's restricted, it's actually, a load off their plate and their mind. So,
yeah. And, one of the things I'll say, and I tell this story in the book, is there was a morning I went out. I have a property that's about 7 acres with some ponds. And I went out there to do some work. And as I was pulling out, my truck got stuck in the mud. So I had to call AAA to tow me out of my own yard. and
don't ever tell that story.
Okay. Well, he shows up an hour later, and then he starts to tow me out. His truck breaks. So he has to call someone to bring him apart, get his truck fixed. That takes about 3 hours. So he finally gets me out of the mud, and I'm driving home. And don't feel too bad for me. I bought the property so I could fish. So I was out there fishing while he was taking care of his truck. But I was driving home. Yeah, and no, it's just a AAA, so it's covered. I tipped the guy pretty well, but at any rate, because I felt bad about his truck breaking, but and him losing a work day for it. But I'm driving home and I realized, whoa, it's almost 6 o'clock, and I didn't eat breakfast. I got out here about 9 or 10 o'clock, worked pretty hard for a few hours, and I'm still fine. So I wasn't really hungry to the extent that I felt like I had to eat, like now. And so I had trained my body to use the fat reserves that I have and to not be desperate for food in the moment. So it's a huge relief, a whole freedom that you have, that you don't have to eat every few hours to keep your blood sugar level. Your body can actually do that itself if you teach it how to fuel and how to manage energy.
This is a really good point to make. I want to share this with listeners. And this is not new news if you've listened to Flipping 50 or you've read blogs or podcasts or done a program. But quite often we've been sold a bill of goods that snacking every few hours, having 5 or 6 meals a day, will boost metabolism. And the opposite, in fact, is true. There's no proof that doing that is good for us. There is quite a bit of proof that it actually increases fat storage. But what you've just said is actually the secret to getting your body to dip into fat stores, going longer and longer periods. And you may not be able to do it right away. But with practice, you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your body adapts. Yeah.
And it's very easy to just walk yourself into this. And it's as simple as, day one, try to push your breakfast back 1 hour.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a simple thing, but you do that and you go for 3 or 4 days. And then when you feel comfortable with the later lunch, later breakfast, push it back another hour. And before you know it, you're at, an intermittent fast where you have an 8-hour eating window. You're eating the same amount of food, but you're giving your body an opportunity to repair and to heal and to learn how to use body fat during that non-eating time. And it's a really powerful tool for the right individuals that have the metabolism and don't have any metabolic issues, to slowly get their body comfortable with that fuel efficiency of, hey, I've got enough on my belly. Let's just go.
Yeah, great point. And for any of you who are out there who've got adrenal fatigue, we're not necessarily talking about you. So this is for somebody apparently healthy. You've tried things and yet they're not working yet. This might be a next step. You also, Allan, you make a distinction between strategies and tactics. And I want to unpack that. So what is that?
Okay. I'm just like you. Before you start doing a podcast, you start listening to podcasts. And so I've been listening to podcasts for a long, long time, reading blogs for a long, long time. And there's one kind of commonality that comes out of most of them is they are great for learning tactics. The 10 best ways to build muscle mass, or the 10 best ways to trim your waistline. Most of those are tactics, and they're going to say, eat this, not that, or they're going to say, do squats, do deadlifts, do compound movements, or so those are all tactics because they're defined at getting a certain result by doing a certain thing. A strategy is more mental, and it should come before the tactics. So an example I like to use is, when I had a job, what I would do is I would want to work out at lunch. And so I would take a gym bag to work, and then I would go to do the workout. But what I found myself doing during that period of time was occasionally I would forget socks or, shoes or shorts. And I'm like, and I lived an hour away from where I worked. So, and the gym was right there by where I worked. And I was like, so I can't drive home and get the socks. And so I'm not going to wear my black work socks, and it's going to look silly. So I just wouldn't work out that day. But what I found is, so my tactics would have been the things I would have done in the gym that day. My lifting routine, the weights, the reps, the tempo, all those different things that would have been a part of my workout. Mm-hmm. But what I found was, without the strategy of pack your gym bag the night before, take an inventory that everything is there, and set it by the door so you would just about trip over it to walk out. When I did that consistently, I made that a habit by using it as a strategy consistently enough, I started working out more regularly. So, putting this in order, you start with strategies. Once you you have your commitment with your vision, and then you set your strategies. Your strategies are meant to keep you on the road. They're meant to keep you in the game. And if you do have a detour or a problem, the strategies are the things that are going to get you back on the road the fastest. So having my gym bag sitting by the door was the strategy. Having my gym bag by the door every work night became a habit. And that allowed me then to execute tactics in the gym that got me results.
So good. Great description. What is, and I'm sure that this comes into play, I feel like you've painted this picture of the wellness roadmap. What is it?
Yes. I came up with the concept of the wellness roadmap based on the journey that I took. And, I think anyone that goes through and they're working on their health and fitness, we often will refer to it as a journey. Because we know there's a beginning, and there's a lot of work, and there's a lot of issues and whatnot. So I kept coming back to this concept of the wellness and the roadmap. Now I'll define wellness again. It's going to be health, fitness, and happiness. When I was in Puerto Vallarta on the beach, 39 years old, just miserable, I didn't have any of those. I was missing all three. So to resolve that, what I came up with was the process that I had to set my GPS. Until you know where you're going to go and where you're starting from, you don't even know which direction to drive. You don't know what is the best thing for you to do. And
Very cool. Yeah.
So basically I came up with the acronym GPS, which is grounding, which is that commitment part I talked about earlier. It's very, very important. The next is the personalizing, and this is looking at your personal today, and benchmarks that are going to matter to you. A lot of people will come to personal trainers and say, I want to lose weight. And for a number of reasons, I can tell them why that's just not really a good measurement. It is a measurement, but it doesn't measure fitness. It doesn't measure health, and it doesn't measure happiness. It is a side effect of getting healthy. And so I say, well, what about your blood markers? What about your squat max? How fast can you travel 1 mile? Those are health and fitness markers that actually can mean something to you based on what your vision is. So what are the health markers that are going to tell you you're moving towards your vision? Because if you ever have been on a road where there really weren't any mile markers, there really wasn't anything, the road looked the same. Some parts of Colorado are like that. You just seem like you could drive forever, and it's like you're not moving. So you need something to tell you that you're moving, to kind of feed the success that you're getting. So set those mile markers that are going to tell you you're getting there. What's your squat like? What's your mobility like? How's your balance? All these little things that we can test. What's your cholesterol number? How's your blood pressure? And then, of course, yes, your weight might go down, but are you losing it in the right places? So for men, particularly, if you've got body fat at the stomach and you're over 40 inches there, you're at high risk for cardiovascular disease. So let's measure that belly and let's get that down. So that's the personalizing of it. And then the S is going to stand for self-awareness. We can be our own worst enemies on this journey if we're not aware of the things that we can and cannot do. And so knowing our physical limitations so that we don't break ourselves, knowing our physical capacities so we know how to push ourselves, because too easy is not going to get us there and too hard is going to break us. And then probably the hardest part of the GPS is when we get onto the mental side. What's your mental self-awareness? What are the limiting things that are going to keep you from being successful? Like, the crackers or chips in the pantry. That's a limit. You understand that limit. So now you can set up some strategies to deal with that. What are your capacities as far as mental? Are you going to be someone who's able to push themselves really, really hard to go through and not make as many mistakes or detours or issues? And are you going to be able to handle a setback? What's a setback going to mean to you? And how will you manage yourself during that? So having that awareness, that self-awareness, now kind of tells you where you are, and you have a vision so you know where you're going, and you have a general idea of the route that you're going to take. And now you're ready to take to the streets. Now, the streets is another acronym, and are not exactly the order that I would have put them in had I not had to make a word. But this is basically what they are. They're strategies. We need to set the strategies that are going to make us successful. Setting that gym bag by the door was a strategy. And then T stands for training. If you want to be well, you have to physically train. And I use the word train instead of workout or exercise because people just don't like those words. And as I told you earlier, I really am a thing about words. So we call it training because you're training for a specific vision. When I was working on mine, I wanted to be able to complete a Tough Mudder with my daughter. So I had a very clear vision of what that was going to take. And my training was geared towards that thing. And so each time I saw a mile marker, I knew I was getting stronger. My endurance was improving. I was losing body fat. I knew I was closer and closer to being able to complete a Tough Mudder without hurting myself. So the training got me there. As I get older, my training is changing because I'm not so much interested in Tough Mudders as I am wanting to be there and able to do similar things with my grandchildren. And then I see my vision in the future. I want to be the guy who can wipe his own butt at 105. So at points in time now, I'm looking at, okay, I've got to train my balance. I've got to train my mobility and my leg strength. I have to maintain that so I can actually stand up off a toilet by myself. Those seem kind of funny, but in a grand scheme, that's the stuff that happens to us when we get older if we don't do something about it now. So I really have this long-term vision of how I want my health to be, who I want to be, and that's where the training comes in. The R is for rest. And there's two parts of rest. Rest is one, allowing yourself to recover from the work you do so your body can actually heal itself and be stronger and better. That's the beautiful thing about our bodies. As long as we stress them right and then rest them and give them the nutrition they need, they can become wonderful. They're just so wonderful at self-healing, getting stronger, getting better if we just do those things right. So resting between workouts, getting yourself well, and then sleep, making sure that you're getting good quality sleep and the right amount of sleep. And that's the rest portion. The first E is energy, and that's going to include your food and your hydration. So making sure that you're getting the nutrition your body needs to be optimal, and making sure you stay properly hydrated so that you're giving your body the fluids it needs for your knees to feel good, for your kidneys to function well, for your blood to flow freely, and just for your brain and everything to just function the way it was intended to function. And then the second E is education. No one person on this earth knows everything about wellness, especially about your wellness, because you're a unique individual. And I can't tell you how to eat. I can't tell you how to work out. If you tell me a goal, we can start talking about strategies and tactics, and we can kind of put a plan together. But you're really going to have to start working at understanding the things that are going to move the needle for you. What are the things that are going to be the biggest and best things for you? Don't waste your time on the biohacks. Focus on the big rocks, the things that are going to really get things done for you. And listening to podcasts like this, reading books, YouTube, but do it responsibly so that when you're not just doing experiments for the sake of experiments. There was a guy on Facebook in one of the groups I was following. He was going to do a dry fast because he had seen this guru say that it was a great way to lose weight. And he was literally not going to drink water for 24 hours.
What?
Yeah. And I told him, I said, I said, I've been in this business for a while. No one's ever, I said, I don't understand. Is there any science? He says, well, there's YouTube videos. And I'm like, okay. He did it. He survived. He lost a few pounds, but then the next day he started drinking water. He put the weight back on. And so, get an education and experiment with things, but, make sure that it makes sense and that you look at the science and you understand why you're doing what you're doing. It might work for someone else and it might not work for you, but you really won't know unless, one, it is the right thing to do. And then two, you give it a fighting chance and you get in there and do something. And then, so we talked about intermittent fasting. Try some intermittent fasting if you're capable, if it's the right thing for you, and see how that works for you. That's the experimenting. That's the education piece. Then the next T is time. And a lot of people will not show the patience, the persistence, or work towards the progression to get the things that they really want. You have to have all three. You have to stick with it. You have to keep doing the work with the persistence, and then you have to push yourself. Because if you just go in there and you do the same circuit workout every day, 5 days a week, and you never move that weight peg up or down, whichever way is going to add more weight or take more weight away that you need to, you're not going to see progress. You're going to be stuck. And everybody knows in a car, it's acceleration that makes driving fun. Once you get to 65 miles per hour and you set the cruise control, now you want to listen to the radio or a podcast or something because it's boring. So, make sure that you're using persistence and you're using patience, persistence, and progression to move yourself further. Now, every once in a while, we're also going to come up with this dreaded fourth P, which is the plateau. And what I'll tell you is it's those other three that are going to help you get past that plateau. It might be time to double down in certain ways or do some structural changes to the tactics that you're doing. But in a general sense, you have to stick with those first three if you're going to beat that fourth one. And then the final, the S, is stress. And this was the one that was the hardest for me. It's also the last one that I'm now really grasping and spending sizable time and effort on, is managing stress. I would have put this earlier in the list. In fact, I think food represents about 50% of this whole journey. Sleep and stress each make up about 20%. and exercise makes up about 10. And I know a lot of folks hearing that from a personal trainer will say, well, you're only able to give me 10% of the results. And I'm like, well, if I were training you personally one-on-one in a gym, I might spend 3 hours with you in a week. You got a whole another 173 hours in your week to do whatever else you're doing. And so, no, 3 hours is not going to offset that other stuff. So stress is really, really important. Sleep is really important. Food is the big one. Manage that, and you're halfway home. And then less exercise. So, that's kind of the 4 pillars that fit within those words, the streets. But most of what the streets is about is setting those strategies, making them into habits, and then putting the tactics in place that get you the results you want. And then the final section of the book I call cargo. Now, this is when you've actually accomplished that vision. So when I crossed the finish line with my daughter at the Tough Mudder, that was it. I had done it. I successfully completed that race with my daughter. I didn't slow her down. I didn't injure myself. I was in great shape. I could have kept going. I felt great. But that was also my celebration. That crossing the finish line with my daughter was my celebration. I didn't go get a chocolate cake and start eating pizza to celebrate that I had reached this fitness, health, and wellness place. I literally went in and said, my celebration is going to be doing the things I saw myself doing. Whereas I couldn't play volleyball. I had to drop out of a volleyball game because I was afraid I was going to have a heart attack. Here I was completing a 12-mile mud run with obstacles with my daughter. That was my celebration, Yeah. Okay, then you need to go back to this awareness aspects of yourself, because to have gotten to this point, you've changed, not just the way you look, but you're a different person. You've changed your lifestyle. You likely have new friends. You likely have a coach that you like, that you've been spending a good bit of time learning from and training with. You have a whole new way of looking at yourself, and you kind of need to stop for a moment and reflect on that so that you understand who you are today and you don't revert back. Because again, this was not a short-term trip. You didn't take this long journey just to turn around and drive all the way back. You got to this point, realize you're different. People are going to treat you different. Some people are going to come up to you and say, wow, how did you do this? You can't write their roadmap. They have to write their own. You can hand them this book, and say, hey, here, you can use this book to plan your course to get what you need. But generally just say, I got my mindset right and I pushed through, and you can help them get into the car, and then they can drive their way. And then you're also still going to have those saboteurs, the crabs in a bucket that to get out of the bucket, they want to grab and pull you back down. Yeah. And but you're out of the bucket. Don't go back in the bucket to deal with those crabs. Let them have their moments, their words. It's about them. It's not about you. You know what you've accomplished. So just kind of get comfortable in this new reality, because you've changed. Most people around you, they're not going to like change. So they're going to have to get used to you, but you're going to have to accept that that's a period of time before they just realize, oh, this was not a short term lose the weight and put it back on. That they're for real.
So good.
Okay. And then the final is the R, is the reset your GPS. So you got to this pinnacle, you climbed this mountain, you went through plateaus and bad weather and all this, and you've gotten to the pinnacle of what you thought was wellness. And now from this higher vantage point, you should be able to see that there's so much more you can accomplish. There's so many things that you're capable of doing that before you wouldn't have even fathomed you could do. But now it's within your grasp. So go ahead and reset that GPS and set off for another destination. Because as I said, driving the same speed or maintaining is not exciting. It's the growth, it's the movement. So, as I said, as I've gotten older, now it's not so much about Tough Mudders. It's about, the capacity to be with my grandchildren and then eventually to be able to wipe my butt when I'm 105. I want that independence. So I'm looking at balance and I'm looking at mobility a lot more than I was, 5 years ago. I'm looking at things differently and saying, what are the fitness modalities that are going to matter for me down the road that I haven't really spent enough time on? And one of them is stress. Stress was the big one. I'm like, okay, I've gotten to this pinnacle. Now I've got to manage the stress thing, because that's the next big thing for me. So I set the GPS and said, stress management is goal number one for the next period of time. Let's charge off again. And that's where the GO comes from, is the go. You're the driver on your wellness journey. No one else can do it for you. There are no plane tickets. There are no shortcuts. There are no Uber drivers. You have to take the wheel. You have to put your foot on the gas. You have to press that gas and get on the road and go.
So good. So many acronyms and little magical tips built within. And we're so speaking the same language. We, just before doing our recording today, last night, it's the last week of a 4-week program. And we always end with, what happens when you're at this point where you've been successful? I mean, that is what you're describing is self-sabotage, actually, that happens even when things are going well. Few people write about that.
Yeah.
They tend to, blogs and articles cater to, why you can't stick with it and you're quitting early before you see progress or because you don't. But there's actually this opposite. You do get there and it's exactly what you're saying. It's boring. And so keeping yourself on the hook, stay accountable to the next goal is what makes it exciting again. Love that. Love that. Okay. So let me ask you one more question, the toughest one of the day. Are you sitting down?
I am. I have an adjustable desk, but just to have my mouth at the right angle from the mic, I tend to sit now when I record.
Perfect. Okay. Is there one question that I missed? Is there something I should have asked you?
No, I think we covered it. I want to recircle around and just let you know that there's really nothing outside your grasp. I have seen just some amazing things happen in people's lives when they took the time to get the mindset right first. And it's a Japanese proverb that I love, and I'll probably butcher it now, but it is a plan without action is a daydream, and action without a plan is a nightmare. So get your head right, have a great mindset, realize that your body is a wonderful, wonderful piece of equipment. It is capable of so much good. It will heal itself if you give it what it needs.
Awesome. Great tips. And where can listeners connect with you best, Allan?
Okay. Well, the URL I'd like to send you to is 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/flipping. And that'll take you to a page that's devoted to your podcast here. And there you can learn more about the book, The Wellness Roadmap. You can learn about my podcast, 40 Plus Fitness, and you can learn a little bit about my training programs. And yes, men, please come on over. We'd love to have you. And I'll also offer a 15-minute consult so we can talk about the group training and the one-on-one training. I usually push people to the group training only because the people that come into my one-on-one, I really want them committed. I want them past that commitment stage. So sometimes it takes them going into the group stage to sit down and get to that point where they've set their GPS. And then the one-on-one is optimal for putting them into the sports car so they can get there as quickly as possible. But I want to make sure it's the right people to put into the sports car, because it's a big commitment on my time and effort, and it's on your time and effort. And I don't want to waste people's time. So coming into the group training gives them an opportunity to get to know me, get to know my training programs and what we do. And then when they're ready to step on the gas and accelerate, the one-on-one works very well.
So good. Thanks so much, Allan. And just for you listening, I've got you covered. The links will be in the show notes, as well as how to connect and follow Allan on social media. So you can also go to Amazon, where I will share that link so you can get Allan's new book, either in hardbound, paperback, or ebook, or audiobook. And man, I hope you are reading that yourself. Your voice is like butter.
Well, thank you. I did, and it was one of the more interesting moments. Definitely didn't help with my stress, but but it was a very good learning experience. The book, the audio book, the whole bit. But yeah, it's available in all formats and all four formats, and there you go.
Thanks so much. And audience, if you have a question that we missed, leave it below the show link at flipping50.com/wellness. I love hearing from you. I'm sure Allan would as well. And if this episode was helpful, please leave a rating in iTunes and then share this with a friend so you can surround yourself with a supportive community of women on the same journey. To get the most from this episode, again, check out today's show notes at flipping50.com/wellness. And you'll find those juicy free downloads and the resources so you can connect with Allan. And what are you waiting for? Let's start flipping 50 together.